straight, and you're just like, it's hard.
Yeah.
Like to like cold greet people and just be like, oh, I'm smiling, and you're like, okay.
You know, honestly, like the place where
Wears me out.
the place where I developed those skills more so than anywhere else is dealing with the bureaucracy at the university. Because I started when
Because if you're going to pester them to death, you have to be friendly, and you have to have all the like office workers.
Yeah,
like,
you have to kind of be like, yeah,
so that they let you through to argue.
Like,
logically
oh, how's
with
it
their
going?
problems.
I just wanted to check on something. Could you please just like look this up? They're like, you know, I ran into this problem, and you know, help me out. You know, and it's like you have this kind of, it's fake, but like it makes everything go better, and everyone's like happier at the end of the day. So like,
yeah,
ethically, I don't feel.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
That. Yeah,
it's like I can be, so smooth and everybody, likable and stuff. I think like I like ran like 3 registrars off when I was an undergrad. Like literally, I think they would call in sick if they saw me coming. Because I like read the catalog and was like getting all the loophole like credit and stuff, and they were just like, I would have to explain. I'd be like, if you'll look at page 17 of your catalog on the lower left-hand corner, that explains what I'm talking about. And they're like, we didn't know about that. Took me like 3 years to get it all done, but yeah, I was in there all the time. It's like, oh, come on, I'm not bad. I'm just gonna, like, not take no for an answer.
Right.
That's when it runs out. You're like, I'm very friendly, but I don't take no for an answer when I'm right.
I see we have a new person.
Esteban? That's Steve-O, or whatever you want to call him. Portuguese INTP, right?
Hi.
Hello.
Are you ENTP?
No. I mean, I don't ever type as that, and I wouldn't identify as that, but someone might type me as that. The very first time I came on Talking with Famous People a long time ago, Eric doesn't remember, but he tried to type me as a ENTP, but I think I'm an INTP.
INTP?
Yeah.
Eric thought you were an INTP too?
No, he thought I was an ENTP when he first met me. But it was just because I was being gregarious, and I reminded him of the other Zach that he was making videos with. Yeah.
Nobody believes them. I'm INTP here.
Really? Why not everyone else?
I mean, Audrey never said anything, but Neptune doesn't believe it.
I didn't say that. I actually saw you go TI the other day when the INFJ dude, who's really into conspiracy theories, came in, and then you challenged him a little bit. Yeah, I thought you did a TI. You took a TI approach. It was interesting because you're not, usually we're not talking about stuff like that. We're usually talking about like social things. So.
Yeah, I'm learning about talking about social stuff too.
I mean, it was never like, I don't believe you're INTP. It's like, he could be something else, which is, I think, the good way to approach typing people.
Well, these...
A good way, rather.
I'm of the opinion that you shouldn't, like, hard box people into their types. It's just because, like, people will continually surprise you, like, no matter how closely they match a typing. It's just that you kind of see their, like, general, it's like what you would expect given, standard operating procedure, like.
Yeah, I like to think of it more as a clustering algorithm taxon rather than a
exactly.
Like, instead of thinking of borders, think of points and cluster them. And so you're like, oh, well, you're going to cluster more towards, I cluster more towards an ENTP.
And to some degree, if you divided all of people into 16 arbitrary...
I'm sorry, my connection was bad.
Yeah. Oh, okay. If you segregate, or not segregate, divide people into 12 different categories based on almost any factor, you can start to develop like consistent behaviors between those groups. But I think, that Myers-Briggs is obviously a little bit more in depth to that and more predictive and has a little bit more machinery behind it.
Yeah, it's
Something like that would be like, oh, we assign people by like what, like wearing or whatever.
Right.
yeah. I was saying that I'm not hardboxing anyone. It's just that them telling me their type, I just
Right.
discard it and I draw connections and then am like, which functions do I see here? And then
Right.
creative
Your
pattern.
own analysis of their types is probably, you want to use your own framework and test it and see.
Right.
Yeah.
If I just took everyone's word for it, that'd be kind of boring.
Yeah, and people are, in psychology they say you should never diagnose yourself. Maybe you also shouldn't ever type yourself, but I don't know. People disagree. So.
I don't know. I think that it's important to have external feedback on typing yourself, but I think that it's still got to be somewhat done by
like
yourself.
when I first
Yeah,
discovered,
there's no way to measure it.
But I think that doing it by yourself without external output is tough because I always typed myself as an INTP.
Well, when I
Until I had external, like actual people, and then I looked and I went, oh, this is the INTP area, this is ENTP. Like, I actually cluster, I much more go over here, but on paper, without anything to compare to, it was really hard to.
Way back in high
Figure
school,
that
I thought I was an INTJ when I like first discovered it, and then I realized that I was answering. What I was doing is I was answering the questions with what I would like myself to be. It's like my idealized self that I was like answering in the. It's like, wait, I'm not like this at all. Like I don't fucking get shit done. Like I was.
Right. Well, there's the difference between what you end up doing, like, because you can do things outside of your preference. Because that's what I used to type as INTJ when I was like a teenager, because I was much more like productive and an ISTJ mom, like that stuff was really prioritized. So I was like, but it wasn't what I liked to do. Like it wasn't my natural state of being.
It's like what you do versus what you would prefer to be doing. You're right. Is totally different. Yeah.
And that is what makes the test so hard to do, is because they have, by necessity, they have to be kind of behavior based, but that's an imperfect relation between the actual cognition.
Yeah, I had once I actually when I actually did my real typing, when I figured like INTP is the best descriptor of my personality, was when I actually did read through the function sets and then like tried to figure out like by kind of like a step-by-step basis like what would make sense, and then also comparing it with like test results, and then INTP was like obvious. The other thing was like maybe sometimes I and FB, but it was mainly INTP. So
But why NFT? What do you think that you?
Well, because I do have like this kind of like a complicated relationship with emotional motivation, and
Emotional motivation, how?
I guess it's like it always. Sometimes I feel like that all of my actions are rooted in like an emotional basis that's like driving everything, but at the same time, like that's not like as far as like my cognition and what I'm aware of, like everything is very much like TI, like entirely managing like all these things, creating a system. Like that's definitely where I'm most at home, as kind of like a system analysis and creating. That's my own. Sometimes like an emotional catalyst that I am completely unprepared to like rein in. I guess it's like something that and so maybe that was part of it, but I think it was mainly just like on the questionnaire, like the ambiguity in the questions and stuff.
But that's also just like a part of being human, maybe.
Yeah.
And also, like if you think of functions as values, and the higher up it's, the more you value it, and then FI is about personal values, then technically it's always coming from a sort of FI
right
root.
Because
I
TI
can see
also
that.
has principles. That's why.
Yeah, I have extraordinarily strong principles, but given enough counter evidence, like they can be changed. But it's kind of like this all or nothing like threshold. I feel.
Yeah, because I define my principles on very secure basis of evidence.
Yeah, and it's based on like if I find things in my life that counteract them, some kind of core principle, like it actually causes me to kind of have a little bit of like an entire reevaluation of like my entire, ethical structure that I operate on. It's not something where I can just be like, oh, like that doesn't fit in. I guess I'll just wait and see if it, like if that's just a fluke. Like I don't know. Like it kind of. I guess I'm quick to react in that way. Like once I see something that's like so in opposition to what I feel, and it's like I'm very quick to, if I can't integrate it into the system, like I immediately start thinking about how I need to change the system.
Yeah, the other day I felt like somebody shook my foundations because Neptune was here, and the other day a guy named Sean was questioning the guy that landed on the moon with the Apollo.
Yeah.
And normally I would consider NASA and every space foundation to be a reliable source of information. And questioning that and seeing how balanced the both sides of proof were, that left me a bit paranoid about what I really know and the sources of.
Right. I mean, I'll tell you, I've at our school, like sometimes they send out like a little bit of like NASA has like a little grant, and they like send it to us, and we like do some work with like a weather balloon and stuff. Like I think everything NASA does is pretty much like above board. There is obviously an element of like posturing for funding, and so you like overstate what you're doing and like the significance of it in order to like get more funding and stuff like that. But as far as like what you guys were talking about, like faking the moon landings and the space program and all that kind of stuff, right? It seems to me that like it would take way more effort to do all that faking and like than it would be to actually like do the program. Just from my own experience of like what it was like to create like a payload to send up into the stratosphere and stuff. Like it's not nearly as complicated once it's been figured out as people think it is. It's just kind of like, I think in the absence of information and familiarity with the subject, like you're less likely to trust the source of information. That's just obvious. So
yeah, but that's the thing. I like astronomy, but generally I focus more on the things that I think are natural to space and how I can use it and see it on Earth. So someone landing on the moon, I normally don't focus too much on people stuff. I focus a lot more on nature, questioning nature, how things work.
Right, so it's not significant to you that people landed on the moon. It's like more interesting that we like were able to discover things from that.
Yeah, but the thing is that the moon landing left me questioning other stuff, other information that they bring. That's the complicated part.
What do you mean?
They photographs and every thing they discover, what might be true or false.
Well, I could say that it could be in the realm of possibility, because during the time there was a high stakes, Cold War stuff. Like I could see the possibility of like if certain things didn't go as well as planned, that you might fudge certain things just to make things like look better. But the fact that like the idea that the whole thing was faked or whatever, like I just don't see how that's tenable.
Yeah, the one thing that keeps me thinking that it really happened is there were thousands of people involved. How they all kept the lie.
Yes. Yeah, because it would be the most incredible coordinated effort and cover up, and it would be like, would it really be worth all that effort when you could have just as easily like managed the narrative another way? Like it doesn't make sense to me. So.
Yeah, and why involve so many people?
Right. If it was going to be something that was, yeah. If you were going to do a cover up, you should have involved like a skeleton crew of people working on it instead of.
That's the thing that keeps me on the fence, because other stuff, pictures that they admitted to be fake, and the whole thing with radiation. I don't know much about photography. They said that it could be explained by the lens, but the fact you don't see any stars in the photo with the moon and the earth is strange too.
It could be an
I have to
exposure
look
thing.
up on that too.
I don't know. Yeah. I know a little bit about cameras nowadays, but I don't know anything about the camera that they used then or anything like that. So.
Yeah, I don't know either. But it would be amazing to see stars in the moon with no atmosphere, no clouds, no lights directed to the sky.
It's a huge difference just going from like a populated area like up into the mountains, like seeing it from space, like just being able to like see galaxies with your naked eye and like being able to like see nebula and stuff, like that's so cool to me. But you know, we're gonna have to take like, well, I mean, probably in the next 20 years, like it might be affordable to do like a high atmosphere flight. You know, you wouldn't have to be like a millionaire or anything. That could be fun.
Maybe more. That would be amazing. It would be like magic. I see. That's the thing. You know, I see pictures from space, and I like to interpret them, but they all are altered in some ways.
Oh, yes. This whether you're in astronomy or you're like in nanoscience, you have like the same problem. Like your way of imaging is you often have to like take little pieces of information and like put it together, or like take, you know, you're receiving weird light, right? You're like taking like a radio waves like instead of visible light or whatever, and then you colorize it, you know, in order to make the picture like look good. You know, there's that element in science that happens all the time. Or like you'll see those pictures of like things under microscopes that are like supposed to be like little cells and stuff. What people don't say is that oftentimes what happens is that they spray the entire surface of everything with silver, and then when they image it, it's a black and white image because it's an electron microscope. There's no color, and then they colorize it based on certain things. Like, so in science, there's always this element of like, you have to if you're not informed about the subject, you could be misled about something.
Yeah.
You
That's
know.
the main thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, you don't have the right to question if you don't know your way around stuff. That's why I see so many people that don't know anything about biology, astronomy, and question vaccines, the landings, things that they don't really understand.
But it's also worth approaching from all the different angles, because sometimes also people can be so convinced that, you know, that they're well informed and they have all these models and everything is like well understood, when in fact, you know, it's just a collection of ideas that you've had that were predictive that led to this thing, and it could not even be real, or, you know, someone else could totally poke a hole in it and it would be valid. You know, just because you're in a position of knowledge authority doesn't necessarily mean that you know, something's not slipping by under your radar, you know.
Yeah, the thing is that many times it's opinions of people that are not very well knowledge either.
Yeah. Well, it's not like, I guess you can. I think there's been like studies and stuff that like people like psychologists and like other people are much more susceptible to like scams and stuff because they're so convinced that they like can't be outmaneuvered, like, you know, psychologically and stuff like that. So that opens up their defenses, you know. I think I've read something like that. It could just be someone speculating, but that's kind of what I mean, you know, like that can happen too.
I feel like that could happen to me too, because normally I think I have the power to discover every flaw, but sometimes, especially when I'm trying to be someone different, when I'm in a social situation, I'm not in my normal environment.
Yeah, when you're trying something new.
Myself, I lose some of my attention, my it's like I'm a little bit locked. Stephen.
I have that same thing. Like I was working on this like experiment, and I was pretty much working on it myself, and I had most of it in my head and stuff, and I was working on it, and I was like, couldn't figure things out, and just talking to a few other people, they were able to reveal things that I was so obsessed. Like I had my own framework that I had designed to think about this thing, and those frameworks are inherently restrictive. And someone else comes in with a new framework, and they show you something that could be of value, and then you have to be ready to incorporate it. Because if you don't, and you just always assume that what's right, like you're going to end up eventually like shooting yourself in the foot,
Yeah, I think socializing is one of the things that is very hard to theorize, at least for me. I've been getting along
it's
better
hard for
because
everyone.
I've been practicing and I make a mistake and I try to correct that mistake. I don't go with a new theory. Makes it a lot easier. Especially hanging out with FE people.
Yeah.
Makes it much more easier. ENFJs and ESFJs. Make it a lot more natural to socialize.
Yeah, that's something I've run into too, is that in the more like social environments, like, let's say like a party or something that's like really hard social, if you spend too much time in, I guess TI is what we're talking about. You spend too much time in there, you're not going to be able to really participate in what's happening. You're going to spend all this time trying to analyze your next move, and then by the time you do it, it's like the event is over.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah. Actually, I get that because I've been working in a place because I'm in college and I started trying to work in some places, and I've been stretching a lot my other functions, and then in the 6th day, I was already very, very tired, trying to fight my cognition, and I started falling into TI again, and I started to look a little bit strange, and those people it was my 6th day with them, and they started seeing me differently.
I had a similar, I guess, I've been trying to do similar things. Like I've been trying to expand other functions to help me do other roles that I'm not used to filling. So for example, like I tried to fill like a little bit of a political role by being kind of like a representative of a group of students to try and get, some change to happen in my university or whatever. But I was woefully unprepared to like take that role as like someone for other people to channel their energy into as like a representative. You know what I mean? Like that's something that there was so many like things that I just hadn't really dealt with, I guess. They were constantly blindsided by things, you know what I mean? And then I start retreating back into what I'm comfortable with, and then like I can no longer like facilitate that role, that's happened to me.
Yeah.
But every time you do it, you get a little bit better.
TI, you can go back at will. And it feels a lot rewarding because it's something
cut
that
out a little bit. What did you say before? Like that's why you need to what?
Need to. It's very easy to fall into TI again. And it's very hard to go back to FE as you were before when you fall into it.
Yeah, because when you fall into it, it's like a stress response rather than like so you're kind of already in like fight or flight mode, so you're not really as adaptive, I guess, because you're like retreating to what you're comfortable with.
Normally, when I fall into fight or flight mode, I start using a lot of TE. Actually,
now that you mention it, that is because when I get super stressed, I start to like over plan everything. I start to like make lists of things that I need to be doing, you know, and as an INTP, it's like, why am I making these lists, you know? And then I'm looking at these lists and I'm like, oh my fucking God, like I didn't do this yesterday. I said I was going to do this, and I like stress myself out even more because I'm like not experienced at all at like, you know, keeping a schedule or anything.
Yeah. But that's the thing, being an INTP, being in a stress situation activates your fifth function.
Yeah.
So especially I see it when I'm arguing and I start to get nervous. I start to act a lot T. My expression gets a lot more serious. The arguments start going to be directed to the means of things. That has no purpose, that has no meaning. I start looking for the final goal, you know.
Right. And that's
theoretical.
I recognize that feeling you're talking about, because that's the moment in which I start to fall apart in an argument. And then later you're like, oh man, I had like, later you're like, why did, like, I had the best, like, this idea in my head is like foolproof. Like, if only I could have communicated that. Like, what's wrong with me?
That I get very frustrated when that happens to me. That's a feeling I can't control, and I have to wait for it to pass.
Yeah. Like, so earlier I was talking with some other people about like a fight I got in with like a professor or whatever, and it got to that point where it was like every time I interacted with them, I started to get that feeling. So I was never able to like stand my ground because I needed to like retreat to like, you know, regain my sort of like, you know, TI. Like I need to be able to use what I'm comfortable with to address this person, because I need to use what I'm best at. Otherwise, like, they're gonna destroy me, you know, like so I would reach.
Yeah. To do
that? Not yet. I'm working on it. I have a plan. It's very elaborate.
But that's very difficult, especially when you're with a group of people and you feel really on the spot when you make some mistake.
It's about a lot of it is like I'm trying to do like confidence building and stuff. I've considered like taking some sort of like beta blockers or something, which is like it like shuts down the fight or flight response. It's basically like performance, high performing like stage people do it sometimes. Like if they get nervous, or like comedians, like politicians, like sometimes they'll take beta blockers. I consider doing it, but I think that in the long run, like using any drugs to like compensate for any like cognitive function deficiencies is in the long run gonna probably cause you more problems. So
if you don't get a little thrilled, if you don't get a little nervous, then things aren't as much fun.
Right. You can't just win all the time. That's boring, right?
So you win. It's better when you win if you have a little nerves.
Oh, I see.
Right.
You don't want it to be easy. I see.
Yeah, if it's just boring, you're like, well, that wasn't exciting. What was the point of it? I do that all the time.
You got to have a little risk.
Oh yeah, like occasionally, like I just go do something crazy just to try to like find something that makes me a little nervous or something. Like I get really excited when I get a little nervous.
I'm much more likely to do that when I'm in a really comfortable spot, and then I get adventurous like that.
Yeah, I get a little too comfortable. Like you mentioned comedy. Like I did that a few months ago. Like I didn't even know I liked stand-up comedy, and I was like, I got into it, and then a week later, I had figured out where the nearest open mic is, which is like 100 miles away, and I showed up. I like stayed up all night, wrote a 5-minute script, and showed up and did it. And that was really exciting, and I
See, that's something that personally for me, it's like, oh God, like I wouldn't go through like that level of like personal like anxiety unless it was something that like I felt like was like really high stakes. Like honestly, like that's
had an actual like accomplishment at the end, other than just feeling
other
good.
Than just like doing some fun crazy thing. Yeah.
I used to do that more, but then you do all those things. You're like, all right, these are dumb. Yeah. Gotten more inclined to do that like the longer I go, because it doesn't replenish. Like once I get over being nervous about something, it really doesn't come back, which I kind of hate. It's good, but I kind of hate it too. So I have to come with like new things to go get that I don't know what I'm doing. And if I do know what I'm doing, because my natural inclination is kind of to like research the heck out of something
Yeah.
and be like, understand it through and through. Go to the, you know, I would have like gone to the mic and like watched it a few times and like totally had it figured out.
Yeah.
But then I've also
that
learned
would have been
that-
my approach. It's like I gotta do
magic.
an open mic night. Oh shit! I gotta like quickly analyze. Like I gotta go through all these comedians, like analyze their sets, and then like try and design my. You know, it would totally and it would
I did some
totally
of that,
bomb
but-
because it would just be like this mechanical, calculated comedy set that would just like.
do some of that. I've learned to split the difference a little more, and also learned that sometimes the magic is in not actually being prepared. Like
Right. Exactly.
that's what's fun.
I realized that like presentations, like even like presenting like scientific material, if you know it really well, it's better to like try to go in casually, and because then you can actually like relate the information to people. If you're standing up there and like panicking and thinking about like your speech and like the order you memorize things in and like trying to regurgitate it to everyone, they're like, okay, you're like reading a Wikipedia article to us, or might as well be, you know.
Yeah. I do like bullet points and notes sometimes when I have to do something like that. But
yeah, but like I find that like
written a whole speech.
being more casual and just like kind of winging it a little bit is like refreshing, and people appreciate it, and you're able to relax. you know? But if you don't know the people well, that'll never work, right? It has to be around people that you, or at least for me, I have a hard time like just going up to a bunch of strangers and then being.
I think it's almost easier with strangers.
It depends, I guess, for me. Like, if there's like a serious, like an emotional thing that's going on with like the people I know, then it might be like harder. But like with strangers, like it depends on the context, right? If they're strangers that have some kind of power over you, then it's like really stressful. But if they're complete randos that mean nothing, right? Then it's easy.
Yeah, I think what it is about people that know me is that, or know you, is that it's you're aware that they already have some sort of perception or expectation, and so the situation doesn't always fit into what like maybe the context in which you've interacted with them before, and so to me that jumping to a new context is what's odd. So you're like, if it's people you know, and then suddenly you're going up in front of them to do a comedy set, like that's a totally different
because you got to like
version of you that they've never seen.
You're
before.
having to redefine yourself for them, and the thing is that you're worried that they're not going to see it, and they're just going to see you doing this, and they're going to like, you know, I see what you're saying.
It's more of a challenge because if they don't have any
you have to reestablish yourself. Like once people have an idea about you, you can't like redefine it for them very easily.
Which I find annoying because it's like I'm so many things and everybody knows me. So I'm like, no, I'm also can do all these things. It's like broaden your definition a little bit, but it's hard.
Yeah. Well, you know, most people are just. I mean, everyone is really just worried about their own plans and where they're headed next and stuff. And so, unless you're like really an intimate part of their life, like you are going to be reduced to a caricature in their mind. You know, like that's just the reality.
Yeah.
I can't stand watching people fail in like an open mic or something. I cringe so bad. Like even in cringy moments, like in TV shows where it's like planned cringe, like I almost have to like minimize the window or something. Like I can't watch it. Like I don't know what it is. I like empathize too much or something. Like I'm
usually just like trying to figure out what it is, and I'm going, why did you do that? That was stupid. Or you know. It's very interesting going to like the comedy nights because I'm not a professional by any means, but I usually have at least a narrative design to my act, and I have some jokes, and I deviate from the script. Like it's not memorized, but it's planned,
right?
And I at least know some of them are going to be funny. And then you see people go up there and they either don't know what they're doing or clearly haven't planned anything, and some of them are all like proud of it. I just wing it every time. I'm like, but you're not good enough to wing it.
They got stress.
Like you need to study the details more before you can wing it. Like
they get like stress amnesia. They get up there and they're like, "What was my set?" You know, like
or it's so programmed. It's so like concrete that it's not funny. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't quite figured it out yet, but it's interesting to see other people do it.
It's like a microcosm of like how to properly interact with people. It's like Comedy is
it's a
like
really
the ultimate test
weird
of like,
relationship with people
Yeah.
because it's a lecture, it's a one-to-many thing, right? Like a lecture, but it's so it hinges
There's
so
a
much
very
on the
specific
emotional
expectation.
response
Yeah.
of the crowd.
yeah,
And
it's
it's one of
very
the things you
specific
can't
and
do it without the crowd. Like
intense,
it only
yeah,
works
expectation.
with that like flow. And
that
I-
happens
I-
with
yeah.
teachers and TAing and stuff like that too. Like if you don't get feedback back from the kids, like you felt it in a classroom where like the teacher's like trying to get some concept and it's like, yeah, so it's like this, you know, and then all the kids are like, and the teacher like continues on and it's just like a complete flop of a lecture, you know, because no one is like
I have to ask my students every now and then, I'm like, okay, you guys good? Follow me? But you can go on a lot longer like rants and things without a response. And like in comedy, you've got to. I mean,
yeah, it's even more
trying
extreme
to
'cause,
get
yeah.
like an average of like a laugh every 20 seconds or something.
God. Yeah, what's the feeling
It's insane.
when you give a joke and no one laughs? Like you have to be able to like roll off of that, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
I roll off of it pretty good because of the mentality I go into it, and I go, I'm not a professional at this. Like I haven't decided to be competitive with it, so it's like, all right, this is a learning experience, and so I'm thinking, okay, contemplate that later, why we didn't get a laugh there.
so yeah, like,
And, but then it does feel awesome when you do get the laughs, you know.
I'd be worried because my default mode of like actual humor that I use on a regular basis with the people I know is complete deadpan, you know, kind of like stuff. And with sensing types, usually they completely do not understand like the sarcasm level or like anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm a very my humor tends to be very deadpan. So I and kind of smart, you know, like plays on words or what I've noticed.
You have to make it obvious like what your intent is.
Well, it depends.
Other
Yeah.
than your
You've got to decide
words,
what
I
you're
guess.
going for, and you know, based on the audience, But I
Like
mean,
body language.
what I've noticed is that people, I do get laughs, but I don't get reactionary laughs. Like people that use a lot of F-bombs and just stuff that people are more or less trained to laugh at. Like I've observed that. Like there's things that you guarantee you will laugh,
Right.
but they're really not important laughs.
It's like
reactionary. They're
it's
like
a
default
conditioned
laughs.
response.
Yeah, it is. It's like a conditioned response, right? And so I like the laughs that people are like, "Oh, that's actually funny." Like I want the actual "it's funny" laugh. But
Like
I've noticed that
where you actually surprised them and they didn't expect it and they laughed genuinely
Right.
because of the surprise.
where it was actually like
Yeah.
the concept that was funny, like it or whatever, like the whole thing. And what I've noticed is there's a pause. Like that tends to be what I get is I deliver the line and I give it a second, and there's nothing for a very long like second or two, and then there's these giggles.
Yeah, I know exactly.
That's what I
That's
get.
what you're gonna get with
Probably what I
deadpan.
got.
You're always gonna get that with deadpan.
Yeah.
Because you have a
"Oh,
mix
that
of
was
people
funny."
that just figured it out, and you also have people that were like, "Oh, I'm supposed to laugh now. I don't want to look stupid."
Right.
You know.
Does your heart sink a little bit, Audra, when during those 2 seconds where nobody laughs?
Not really, because I'm in like analysis mode for that 2 seconds, or I'm trying to remember what the next bit of my set was going to be about, or whatever it is.
Analyzing why your heart is sinking. I'm just kidding.
I don't know. I'm really just enjoying the mood. Like I get a little nervous. Like so far, I haven't done it too many times, but I get a little nervous before I go on stage, and like all the prep up to it, and also watching all the other people like get really bad responses. And sometimes it's like a really bad crowd. It's just like really there's like
you're
3
like,
people
well-
and none of them want to laugh at anything, and.
So by
And then you're watching
comparison-
these guys, and then you're kind of getting angry. He's like, I don't like their jokes. This isn't funny. And then my set's usually very different from the average set. So it's like, okay, how's this going to go in amongst these other sets? And then once I walk up on stage, once I pick up the microphone, I'm cool, and I'm like totally enjoying myself. I'm like in the zone.
It's so cringy watching
So-
people make offensive jokes that also aren't clever because they're
It can
like
be-
breaking so. It's like, why did you like not plan out such
Well,
an offensive
sometimes you
joke?
can get laughs just by breaking like a taboo because people are so surprised that you did it and they're like a little bit drunk that they're just like, oh,
Yeah, but
You know,
it's sort of like the cliche, like obvious, like thing.
like, oh my god, I didn't realize how racist he was. Like, you know.
What if the joke was
Yeah.
set up where they just said one very like offensive term and then they
Yeah.
like pause for a moment and they're like, shit, I didn't really plan this too far.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I see that all the time. I see a lot of, and they'll
and then
like
it's
milk.
like
There's
they're-
just
they
like
dig themselves in a
offensive
hole.
concept. Like they'll give you an image, and then they'll set it up, and then they'll just kind of like act it out and stuff, and like it's not that clever, guy. You know?
Yeah, if you're gonna make an offensive joke, I think it should be really, really smart.
Well,
I don't know
I
why,
tend
but-
to lean more towards the like Jerry Seinfeld kind of philosophy, which his philosophy is basically if you have to use those sorts of things to make people laugh, you're not really being that funny. So you should be able to make people laugh while being clean, you know. And it's not that he's against it. It's just like he thinks that's the higher version of it versus like Louis C.K., who's a really good comedian, but he's also I've heard him talk about it. And he's like I don't care. He's like I'll take the cheap laughs.
My
you know?
my friend's
Wait,
here.
what were
I
you
gotta,
saying?
I gotta go let my friend in. Sorry guys. I'll
all right.
see you guys later.
Bye.
Well, I mean, Louis C.K. will eat a day-old cinnamon bun at an airport, where an employee will try to argue with him. No, you don't want that. No, give it to me. Okay, you know what's gonna happen. He's gonna take whatever he can get. But I had a funny joke running in my head with the offensive term, just someone saying something really offensive, and then thinking, "Shit, I didn't plan this too far," and then they just kind of dig themselves in a deeper and deeper hole. And then they just start saying more offensive things, and you're like, wait, no. It just make it like even more worse, and it's just piling up. It's like,
And it's all part of the.
I'm like standing on like, I'm not gonna say it. The
Yeah.
pile of something more like really offensive.
Well, it's one of those things. Like I'm happy to touch taboo subjects, but I like to do them I like it more that deadpan. I want to say something, and then I want like 2 seconds later to be everybody realize like, well, that was kind of a racist joke, wasn't it? I don't want it to be obvious. Like that. That's what
slipping in.
I do that all the time in real life. Like I'll say something, I'll see the opening, and I did it in here the other day. And nobody caught it, but it was, there'll be an opportunity to make a real subtle, like, it's not super subtle, but it's and I much prefer that sort of stuff. But
when someone tries to pull that, it's like I feel maybe it's I don't know. It's my NI. Is it catching it? Like that seems out of place, but I can't quite put my finger on it. So I'm
what
gonna.
it is it's when it's in place. Like it makes perfect sense contextually, but it's also the way you say it, and it could be totally taken the wrong way too. Like it's almost like there's two contexts at the same.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
my
Like,
favorite stuff.
like I'm thinking,
Like,
like I feel like there's something else here. You know what? Their face is straight. They're moving on. I'm gonna assume that it's not that thing. I'm not gonna bring it up. Sometimes I say something like that, like I think they're doing a joke, and they're like, "What? No, wait, what?" I'm like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah. Well, I think I kill
funny.
myself by being too deadpan because I think it's funnier if I'm totally deadpan. And but the curse of that is that without giving a physical signal, a lot of times it just goes on by.
I usually can't keep a straight face. It's like for a moment I'll keep a really straight face, maybe for a good while, and then the person will look at.
Yeah, I can keep a
once in a
straight
while.
face forever, which is causes a lot of jokes to be missed. But then I'm just laughing to myself in my head.
Well, the thing
You
is,
have to be
I
amused by
won't.
yourself.
Yeah, I won't keep it. I'll laugh afterwards. Like, they're like, "Are you serious?" No, like my face will start to just break out into a smile. And like, no, oh my god, that's horrible. I'm just a terrible human being. That's all. But I agree with that. Clean jokes. Yeah, if you're actually really funny, and you can pull it off without any of that, it's like handicaps or whatever. I mean, it's like the handicapped. Wait, no. It's like
It is.
It's
That's
like-
exactly what it is. It's taking some handicaps and making it more of a challenge, which is literally how I do almost everything.
it's like taking the handicap and pushing them off and taking their wheelchair for a spin.
Oh, I was talking about like handicapping yourself. Like,
Yeah, no, I meant that. I was trying to think of how to work it into an offensive joke to someone.
oh, okay.
I was trying to any, but see, I was failing.
Well, I was kind of zoning out, so
All right, well,
either. Yeah, I was. But
this
yeah,
will just be recorded on the internet for all to witness.
there we go.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
I sometimes wish I was smarter so I can make like clever jokes. It's like I feel like in my head I got like the pieces for something really cool, but I'm not clever enough to make it like it's like I know there's something missing here. It would make it awesome, but I can't. Shit, I can't think fast enough. It's brain, think faster, and then it's like the opportunity just goes and like I missed it.
Yeah, I usually, because I can usually see too many possibilities, and I usually pick a mediocre one and say it, and then about an instant later, I realize I think of the better one.
Oh yeah,
And I go, oh,
no.
that's what I should have said. But
I do that with like a whole ton of things. I'm like, no, this would have been
but
better.
I'm not as quick as some people like it. My brother is, and my sister, like they're so quick, and I'm still thinking of the possibility. Like I'm overwhelmed by the possibilities rather than the NI or whatever going. Oh yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
You know, and it doesn't just like pop right out.
A lot of
I'm
times I'll
getting
try to
better
say,
at it. Like I've had to work at
Yeah.
it, but yeah.
like I'll say something and then especially with my brother, it's like he sees me, he's like, oh god, you're trying to make a joke. And then when I say it's like that makes no sense and there'll be a certain face and then afterwards like, no, that doesn't make sense. No, you should have said this. This would have been better. I'm like, you're right.
Yeah, I've also noticed that I do a lot more bad jokes. Like I will do some really bombs like around my family, but then I do make some really hits. But I tend to be one or the other. Like it's
Oh yeah, no,
some of the stuff that I find hilarious that just bombs with everybody else. And you're like, okay, but every now and then I'll hit one that it's like right on. But I'm not as consistent with kind of the medium like usually hits. I feel like is like my brother and my sister. But
yeah, like I know I'm not the funniest person in the world, so my other attempt is just to make people cringe as much as possible. So at least, you know what, I'm not the best. I could at least try to be the worst.
and that works sometimes. Yeah. I'm always working on I'm trying to figure out my persona because I actually don't have I can write jokes and everything, but the delivery I've learned is so important.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
Don't have really a natural delivery. Like it's all Effie, it's that Effie, like SE kind of thing. And I've got to figure out how I'm going to deliver things and get a better feel for what sort of delivery with what sort of jokes gets the right reaction. Because I've played the same jokes with totally different deliveries, and some of them hit, and the delivery is what will change whether they hit or miss.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's a lot harder to like plan out or get a handle on compared to like writing the jokes. And it's like,
Yeah. It's kind of like character building or character
It is.
creating characters because it's like once you have this identity, like when I think of well-established characters that I love, I can make I can make my own stories in that character and it'll fit because I have a good feel of what they're like. I'm like, oh, this is hilarious because this is totally what this person would do, and they have all these rules and nuances you could play with and expectations you can mess around with, and it's I guess, I don't know, there's like a base or something like that. I don't know how to, I know exactly what you're talking about though.
Yeah, well, it comes back to like I have certain established personas with myself and I'm very comfortable in, and I haven't decided if that's, and I think the closer it is to kind of your default, the better it's going to be. But it's still good. But it's always going to be kind of a flavor on that. And I haven't quite figured out where I'm going to go. But yeah, I don't know. I feel more comfortable in like the pretty deadpan kind of sly persona, and that seems to work better. I think that tends to work better with the sort of humor I'm doing.
I feel like that fits with you
But
because the persona is kind of almost, it's like the person, but it's more emphasized things
yeah,
of
but
that
the
person.
thing is I can also be kind of goofy and like physical and stuff, but I don't know that that's
It'll fit more.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I definitely am not going to be like the.
I feel like they get a little too much exhausting.
That one I can do, but
Like all the time.
I can do that, but like some of the like the flirty or the kind of I don't know, I guess dumb. I don't really do that very well.
Oh, I know what you mean.
But anyway,
It depends on
it's interesting. I was thinking about a handicap thing you said. I was like, I realized that I do that so bad.
I'm just thinking about wheelchairs. I was in my lab at school and this girl was wheeling around. I'm like, you're like a pro. She's like, one day I'm going to have to learn how to use these. I'm like, at least you're prepared. You're not gonna be handicapped in this department. Like I try to aim really cringy, terrible puns. That's usually what I do. Is my default. Easy. I'm a weak person.
Yeah, I can make really bad puns.
It's not.
It's
It's
kind of
not.
fun too.
Yeah. It's not because I'm good at. I'm a weak person. Instead of going with like a clever, good joke, no. I'm gonna just reach for the cheap
Oh, but
bottle right
it's
there.
sometimes fun to do that though, just for the counter.
Yeah. Some people really love it because they do it too. So it's like Oh, you know what's really great?
The reason you love it is that one person that can't stand it. Like that's why you do it.
Actually, there is somebody. I used to work at this restaurant, and this one person, he absolutely hated puns. And I know this coworker, she loves making puns so much. So I was talking to her and saying like, "Man, it's." And I started to pun with her back and forth. And he was in the middle between us because there's like 3 registers. And it's like, man, I kind of feel bad for him. He's like, oh, no, this is nothing. Do you know this guy? I'm like, oh, yeah. Oh, my God, yeah. He makes like way more puns than you. Yeah, this one time it was me, him, and this coworker. And he was between both me and him. And we did it all day, like for hours, our entire shift. And I'm like, that's really hilarious. Just imagining, because their level of puns, it's like to a new plane. It's like the coworker. I know that sounds boring because I don't have their names. I don't want to say it, but this coworker that hates puns. It's like work was made into like a new purgatory for him. You know, it usually is a purgatory, but it was like just a new one.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right, though. The ones that hate the puns, that's what makes it funny, because there's pain.
Yeah. Well, my mini dinner conversations at my house have turned into just like who can out bad pun the rest, and we have like bad pun stories, and just like we're very like good at it. Like, and then we can just go on forever and ever and ever. And then my mom will play for about 2 puns, and then she's done.
She taps out.
And she taps out, and then she's the target. Then she's the responder that goes. It's like, why are you doing this?
Yeah, you're not playing, then
And then we just keep rolling because she's bothered by like if once she kind of like leaves, we tend to peter out.
Yeah, that's funny.
I don't know, something about she's got FI 3rd slot, and it's just so reliably responsive. Like to her detriment and our infinite amusement is that unlike us where things like you can get us once but then it's really not going to work again, the same things work forever. Still, and it's so predictable, so you know exactly how to get like the responses, and you almost know what response you're going to get out of something, but you know you're going to get it, and so it's great.
I think that's what my brother does. Like he knows the buttons.
Yeah.
Exactly where the buttons are. But it's not like, oh, I'm going to press this button. No, you overkill the button. Now I have like these weird visual jokes in my head. It's really funny. That's the thing too, with like a lot of my jokes, they're like I have visual ones made, but I can't really like portray it well to people because it's not a language. I don't even know the words. It's not like a storytelling setup.
Ooh.
No, I'm just
Ash.
Hello. Is that a pile of ash?
It's a pile of ash.
Is that grandma? Daisy, I got one. Yeah, I would agree with that. ENTPs and ENTPs can look like ESTPs.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've chameleoned a lot as an ESTP.
Yeah.
I can almost be an INTP, like I can actually like almost act like, but I can look like an ESTP.
Yeah.
I
Well,
would say those are the two that I can go to.
yeah.
And maybe INTJ. I can occasionally appear to be an INTJ, but I'm not actually doing things like an INTJ.
Well, I know when I'm in public, like, I tend to not seem too much of an INFP, apparently. Because I guess I don't know, I present myself differently. I don't really... Well, the other thing, too, is I can't, like, really show my crazy NE like I normally do, because people will think that's either weird, they'll get lost, or, I don't know, make them uncomfortable. So I kind of tone it down a bit. So people think I'm a little more, like... People think I'm organized. That's the other thing, too. Like, they think I'm really organized. I'm like, you have no idea. You don't want to step into my room. Actually, the other day, I tripped walking into my room because I forgot I placed my backpack, like, right in front of the doorway. Like, oh, yeah, I put that there.
Yeah. Well, like...
Fire hazards.
Like, acting like an ESTP. Like, it's that... Maybe not talking like, but in the physical world, like acting like an ESTP and doing very SE stuff and
Yeah.
Hoorah, woohoo, let's go, whatever. Like
Do shit.
I can be very physical and very physically competent, that sort of thing.
Right, your YouTube channel intro thing looks very ESTP like. It's awesome.
But yeah, but in my head, I'm way more theoretical, and my natural state is sitting around, contemplating. And I've also kind of thought about the way I do SE, and it always goes through NE or something, Yeah, I'm the nerdy bad. I'm a nerdy badass. That's basically, or badass nerd or whatever. Like it's like, but I'm definitely the nerd.
I feel like that'd be like the ultimate kind of badass.
Well, of course.
It's fun.
Reminds me of Maisie William. Who's that? Her name sounds familiar, but detail is not coming. Okay. I've seen that person. Yeah, I haven't got into Game of Thrones yet. It's a rabbit hole I haven't jumped down. What you're saying is that Maisie, yeah. But I'm the original. She's just copying me.
Yeah, like she's not real life, okay? Just a poser.
That's why those characters don't ever grow up in stories. It's like it's almost a problem. Like literally, no one would believe all the stuff I've done.
I find that way more cooler.
It's like I've tried writing characters. I'm like nobody. I could never be the main character in a story. It doesn't work.
That's why you make an autobiography.
Yeah. I mean, I usually, like the character that's like me, because I like to have one that's kind of like me in stories just for fun, but they're always the secondary. They're the backup character that's kind of off screen most of the time.
Wait, so you're telling me that as an ENTP you actually know yourself? That's rather surprising.
I've been studying it a long time.
I'm jealous of that trait.
I always try to make interesting characters, but in the beginning I always start off like with my own similar type, and then I get bored. I'm like, this is so boring. I can predict this. I want something different and interesting.
Well, I usually have to, I wrote one character that was pretty close to me, like in the book that I put out, but in the end I had to make the character more impulsive and kind of like dumber. Like, I usually have to make them a little bit dumber, a little more impulsive. Because the thing about a book is it's all about conflict and getting into trouble and making bad decisions.
Yeah. I actually want my character to be smarter.
And I
but
could have,
they're
like,
smart. Yeah. Yeah, no, I see.
Yeah, you can have every character. You're like, all right, let me approach this bad situation, and let me think of all the possible. Okay, that's how we'll get out of that. And it doesn't usually get